Okay, so confession time, um, family drama, am I right? This deep dive into Genesis is giving me life. We're digging into chapter 42 this time, and wow, this analysis from My Christian Space, it really gets into all the psychology of Joseph and his brothers.
Yeah, it's one of those stories, it kind of grabs you even if you've heard it a million times before, right? And what this commentary does so well, I think, is it shows how these events, they aren't just like plot points, they're really showing us something about like human nature, about sin and grace and how we react when those things kind of collide.
Yeah, and the timing of it all. I mean, it's been what, like over 20 years since the brothers, sold Joseph into slavery. Talk about holding a grudge.
Right.
And now they're facing this famine, desperate for food, and guess who they have to turn to?
Oh, the irony.
It's Joseph, the very brother they betrayed, except they have absolutely no idea it's him.
And that's where this whole idea of like spiritual blindness comes in, The commentary, it argues that the brothers' guilt, their unconfessed sin, it's like literally blinding them to the truth that's standing right there in front of them.
Wow.
They bow down to Joseph, right, fulfilling his childhood dreams, but they don't even recognize him. It's like, it makes you think, like, what truths are we blind to in our own lives? Because of stuff we've done in the past or like guilt that we haven't really dealt with.
That's such a good point. It's easy to judge these guys, the brothers, but haven't we all been there? Avoiding something uncomfortable, hoping it'll magically disappear on its own.
Oh, yeah.
But Joseph,
Uh-huh.
he is not letting them off that easily.
No, he's not. And that's where things get really interesting, I think. You see, on the surface, it looks like, revenge, right? Like Joseph's setting this trap, this elaborate game to get back at them.
Right.
But the commentary suggests he's after something way deeper than that. He wants confession.
So it's not just about punishment. It's about them actually owning up to what they did.
Exactly. He wants them to really face their past, to experience like true repentance. Think about it. He could have just, boom, revealed himself immediately, right? Used all his power, demanded apologies.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He chooses a much more subtle approach and honestly, probably a more impactful one.
So how does he do it? How do you even lead someone to confess when they don't even realize they're confessing?
It's pretty masterful when you think about it. He uses their own guilt against them. He keeps accusing them of being spies, which plays on their deception, right? Their history of lies. And then there's Benjamin, their younger brother. Joseph insists they bring him to Egypt, but he doesn't just say, hey, bring your brother. He says, bring another brother, like echoing their betrayal.
Oh, wow. The subtext. So he's like poking at their deepest wound.
Yeah.
It's like this psychological thriller.
It really is. And here's the crazy thing. It works. The brothers start confessing. They're like lamenting how they treated Joseph, acknowledging their sin. But, and here's the catch, they think they're just talking to each other.
While Joseph is listening in. Can you imagine that mix of emotions?
Oh, I know.
Talk about an intense family reunion. But, before we get to all that, I'm curious about something. Well, we left off with this image of the brothers, right? Confessing, but thinking they're alone, like completely in the dark. So does Joseph ever actually confront them? Like, surprise, it's me, your long-lost brother, and by the way, I heard everything.
Not exactly. No dramatic reveal or anything like that. Instead, what Joseph does is he sends them back to Canaan. But, and here's the twist, he sends them back with something that leaves them even more confused and honestly kind of scared.
Okay, more confused than finding out their long-lost brother is now like this Egyptian VIP. What could top that?
Well, remember how Joseph kept accusing them of being spies?
Right.
He uses that as a reason to keep Simeon behind in Egypt. And get this, when he sends the others home, he secretly returns their money, like hides it in their sacks of grain.
Whoa. Okay, I thought I was following this story, but now I'm like completely lost. Why return the money? What's the strategy there?
No, right. It's like a puzzle. This is where the commentary gets really interesting, especially in how it unpacks these ideas of grace and perception. I mean, on one hand, you could see it as another way to like poke at their guilt, right? Like, did you really think you could pull one over on me and get away with stealing too?
Oh, that's a good point.
But on a deeper level, the commentary seems to be saying that Joseph returning the money, it's actually an act of grace, like this kind of undeserved kindness, almost like a hint of the forgiveness that he's like wrestling with deep down.
But the brothers are clueless about all
Yeah,
that.
totally. They have no clue what's going on inside Joseph's head.
Right.
And that's part of the point, I think. The commentary really emphasizes how the brothers, they just completely misinterpret what's happening. Instead of seeing the returned money as this sign of grace, they freak out. They think it's a curse, like a bad omen. They even say, what is this that God has done to us? So they get that something bigger is going on, but they're so wrapped up in their own fear and guilt, it's like they can't see straight.
It's like they're stuck, like their past is holding them back from seeing what's right in front of them.
100%. And it makes you think, are we any different? How often do we let our own, baggage, our past mistakes or fears or insecurities keep us from seeing the good? Like even when it's staring us right in the face?
Okay, so zooming out for a second, we've got this story about confession, forgiveness, and how messy it can all be, right? But it's also a story about a family. And right now, that family is totally shattered. You've got Joseph in Egypt wrestling with his past, the brothers going back to Canaan more terrified than when they left, and then there's Jacob, poor Jacob.
Oh, tell me about it. Jacob is stuck right in the middle of this whole thing, and he has no idea what's actually going on. Can you imagine the anxiety? Years ago, he loses Joseph, then he thinks Simeon's gone too, and now his sons come back with this crazy story and a demand to take Benjamin back to Egypt.
I mean, as a parent, that's like the ultimate nightmare. No wonder he's so hesitant.
Of course. But here's where the story takes another turn.
So Jacob's in this impossible position.
Yeah.
I mean, terrified of losing another son, right? But also facing famine. What's he going to do?
Well, eventually he has to give in, right? The famine's just too bad. He agrees to let Benjamin go back to Egypt with the other brothers.
Which is a huge deal when you really think about it.
Oh, absolutely.
This isn't just about getting more grain at this point. This is Jacob, confronting his own past, don't you think?
Oh.
The way he favored Joseph, the grief that he's still carrying around, it feels like a turning point in the story.
Totally. It's this moment of incredible risk. He's basically saying, okay, I'm going to face my fears head on. And he's putting his hope, however fragile it is, in the hands of the sons who, let's be real, betrayed him all those years ago. And don't forget about Simeon.
Oh, right. Still stuck in Egypt.
Exactly. The commentary makes this point that Simeon being held captive, it's not just a random detail. It's like this whole symbol for how the brothers are trapped by their past, by their mistakes.
Right. And it's Simeon, whose name literally means hearing.
Exactly.
He's stuck in this place where he's forced to face what happens when you don't listen. When you don't pay attention to that need for repentance, it's like their spiritual state, but played out in a physical way.
That's such a good way to put it. And I think it's through these struggles, these difficult situations, that the brothers, even Jacob, they start to, actually grasp what forgiveness and grace really mean. It's like they're living in this story, but they don't fully get it yet.
It's like we're all walking through our own version of Egypt sometimes, right? Making mistakes, facing those tough times, trying to make sense of it all. But here's what gets me. Can we just talk about how nobody recognizes Joseph? I just want to scream, it's him! Your brother! He's right there!
I know, right? It's like, come on, guys. How do you not see this? But I think that's part of what makes this story so powerful. It's like we're right there with them, feeling that tension, and it forces us to really think about our own ideas about forgiveness, about reconciliation, and about how God works in ways we don't always expect.
It reminds us that sometimes the answers are right in front of our faces, but we can't see them because, we've got our own blinders on. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into Genesis 42, I think it left with this question. What if the real challenge isn't just recognizing God's grace when it shows up, but actually having the guts to take off those blinders so we can see it in the first place?
That's so good. It's like it takes honesty, and vulnerability and a willingness to actually look at the hard stuff inside ourselves. But the story of Joseph and his brothers, it's a journey that can bring real healing. And ultimately, it can lead us to a deeper understanding of just how amazing God's love really is.